You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObsessive.com. Okay, welcome to the TV Obsessive podcast. I'm Cameron Crain, the executive editor of TV Obsessive. I'm joined by Ryan Kirksey. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing great, Cameron. Really excited to get this thing started.
Well, yeah. So, Ryan, you write for the site. I don't know. Do you want to introduce yourself? I feel odd trying to talk about
Yeah,
you.
of course. Yeah, I've been writing for TV Obsessive now, really just about 9 months.
When is it that long?
Done several shows over that time. I went back and looked. Actually, I think the first thing I contributed to you guys was a review of the show She-Hulk, which looks really bad at looking back at it after the fact, but it was at least enough to get a gig there, and moved on to much better things. So yeah, I've worked on White Lotus, Last of Us, most recently Lucky Hank, and I've dabbled in a bit of the MCU shows during my time.
Well, yeah, no, that's funny. I think I kind of forgot about the She-Hulk article.
Well, you
I
should have forgot about the show. So the article's easy to forget too.
Oh, I didn't watch the show, so I mean, that's so I mean, it's which I mean, I do like Tatiana Maslany, so that's something, right? The first thing I recall you writing was the Lost article.
Yeah, I did. I wrote a piece about how the last, I think, 5 episodes of season 3 of Lost are really, in my opinion, some of the best TV ever. I've recently gone back and reviewed that show. We're showing it to our kids for the first time, and that's my all-time favorite show. And I just was as we were rewatching that season, I just looked at that arc as we led to the halfway point and what happened there, and said, there really is nothing better, in my opinion.
Right on, yeah. I mean, I'm also a fan of Lost, and it does feel like almost a minority view to not hate on Lost. Like it seemed to settle in a little bit that people hate on Lost, and other shows be like, "Oh, I hope this doesn't turn into Lost." Why? Lost is good, I think, right?
I'm a Lost finale apologist, so you won't hear me hating on any of
Yeah,
that. I will defend it for forever. I thought it really landed the plane, no pun intended, and yeah, it's my favorite show now and forever. So
right.
it'll be hard to top it in the years to come, I think.
Did you like the finale right away?
I did, but
Mhm.
I think for me, a lot of it was experiential. So this was a show that my wife and I watched with a big group of people from
Yeah,
about the end of season 2 through the end. And we were all invested in it. And we were all looking at, sort of as much you could find online in those days, what the theories were, what was going to happen. I think it was the end of episode 3 when he's in I guess, spoiler alert for a show that ended 13 years ago. But yeah, for the end of episode or season 3, when Jack is at the funeral home, we're all like trying to peer on the side of the TV to see who was in the coffin and all these things. We were invested, and so we watched the finale with that group, and it was very emotional. And there was a lot of discussion after the fact, but we all landed on the fact that we liked it.
right on. That's cool. I had a different experience. I mean, I was really into the show, and I ended up watching the finale with a group because it did feel like an event. This is
Yep.
what 2010,
Yep.
which makes me feel old, but I did not. It didn't land for me at first. Like I think, but and my friends too. And after we finished watching it, we kind of sat there complaining about it a bit. But I came around on it later, and when I rewatched the whole show, um, in 2020, I did a full rewatch,
Yeah.
and it's good. It's fine, you
Yeah.
know. And then so I don't know. I don't know why. It's not like Game of Thrones. Anyway.
Oh yeah. Oh boy. Let's not go down that road.
But it's just, I think it's really interesting with Lost that actually you do get a lot of answers to a lot of your questions. But one of the things I always loved about the show personally was that they had a way of kind of opening up bigger mysteries so that by the time that they did give you the answer to something you used to be wondering about, it didn't feel as important anymore.
Right.
And so and I thought that was a really really kind of ingenious sort of structure to it. So I don't know. Some people seem to think like they didn't answer questions, and I'm not sure what all they wanted to know. I mean, it's one thing to be dissatisfied with answers, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I think that J.J. Abrams always used to talk about that mystery box concept, and it was better not knowing what was inside than what was. And I was fine with what they left inside and what we didn't know and what answers we did get resolution to.
yeah, well, absolutely. So, oh, I mean, we were going to talk about a couple of things here, but I was going to say something as we got going about the structure of the podcast. So this is our first
Yep.
episode. And the kind of general plan is that we'll do a bit of casual chatting about what we've been watching, hit on some news items and things like that, whatever else we might talk about. And then ultimately, as we move forward, we'll start digging into probably usually some currently airing show, but that might change, might mix up a bit in sort of the latter half. So I think our basic plan here on this first one is just kind of introduce ourselves. We do have a list of news items we want to hit. And I think that's going to be it for this one. And then we're going to start talking about the bear next time.
Yeah, and it's something I'm very much looking forward to. A show I love. I know you've just seen it for the first time, and we'll hit on this back at the end, I'm sure. But yeah, I think next time we'll go through and revisit season 1 of The Bear and getting ready in preparation for season 2 out next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm on season 2 and talking about it with you. So that'll be the general plan for people, kind of orienting ourselves here a bit in the first episode. Probably, well, at least when we are digging into something like the bear or whatever comes after, we probably will get a bit into spoiler territory when we're talking more casually at the beginning part. Maybe we'll try to avoid that a little bit, but
yeah, and
we'll see how it goes.
I would encourage folks to, if we dig into a show like that, watch along with us. Bear is going to be an interesting one because they're going to drop everything at once, which I think is not our favorite way to do it. But
no, it isn't.
We'll go through it over a few times, encourage people, watch along and stay up with it. That should be an easy, quick watch for folks.
Yeah, and I hope that people are kind of into thinking about it and talking about it. It's part of what was impressive with the first season is that it did have that a bit.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, particularly in terms of what we do with the site, and I think we were talking about Lost. I think we're on the same page. Part of what we enjoy is all of that stuff that can end up surrounding the show. That part of what was so enjoyable about Lost when it was on was that that it wasn't just watching the show week to week or waiting for the next season or what have you, but engaging with what people were thinking about it, theories that people had, and all kinds of stuff. So we'll see what all we get into on here.
Yeah, and there'll be no shortage of shows that'll allow us to do that, I think. So looking forward to diving into that stuff with you.
All right. Well, should we go to our news list, or
let's do some industry news? How about that?
Yeah. So we mentioned Pat Sajak retired.
Yeah, the GOAT, the game show GOAT, right? Just came out a day or so ago. Pat Sajak, after his 41st season of Wheel of Fortune next year, is going to be retiring. The Guinness World Record holder for longest game show tenure. Not much to say other than that. Just a little bit of a props to a guy who's been doing it since forever.
Yeah, it's almost striking to me that when you give me the number, I guess he hasn't quite been doing it my whole life. It certainly feels like it. I'm 42, so like maybe started when I was a baby.
Yeah.
You
and I, it seems, are exactly the same age. So we do not know a world without Pat Sajak.
Now, do you remember? I remember as a kid on Wheel of Fortune. I swear this is true, but I don't actually know it's true. But I very clearly recall that they used to have to like buy furniture with the money they won.
I think that's right. The things I remember about it from when I was a kid was, you could use your winnings to buy certain things.
Yeah, like,
and then over the years, Vanna's job changed from she actually just had to turn the tiles over, to show you the letter. Now it's
Oh
just
yeah,
boop, boop, press
yeah,
the button, right?
yeah.
So she's
They computerized
will
that.
continue to have the best job in the world, I guess, for a little while. But that's the two things I remember from watching at my grandmother's house when I was a little kid.
Yeah, I was talking, and I don't even recall. I'd love to watch one of those old episodes because I have this vague memory where,
Yep.
like, oh, well, you know what I want is that tube television.
Yeah, now you got to like you got to spin a wheel, you got to draw an envelope out. It used to be just
Oh,
pick the
they
thing you
definitely
want.
call. I thought they always spun the wheel, but I don't know. I just recall they had to
Yeah.
like um
Anyway,
buy
Pat Sajak, congrats
prizes.
to you, buddy.
Yeah, he died. I wrote I actually wrote something on Alex Trebek when he died a few years ago. So Trebek has maybe more of a place in my heart almost than
Yeah.
Sajak,
Yeah.
but um, he passed away unfortunately. So, I mean, I wonder, do you think maybe are they going to continue Wheel of Fortune? Is it going to be hosted by Drew Carey now or something?
Yeah, that's a great question. You mentioned Alex Trebek. So that show is still sort of undergoing an evolution of what it wants to be. They turned it much more into a primetime event. I know that's the intention of the new producer. I think that's sort of these celebrity hosts, these big tournaments, all these champions coming back. So turning it into sort of this main event type show, as they say, well, we don't want it to be exactly the format that it was forever, and that's ruffled some feathers. There's a pretty diehard set of fans out there that follow that show, so it's undergoing an evolution. I bet Wheel of Fortune does the same thing.
Yeah, be interesting to see. I mean, I kind of took the position when Trebek died that Jeopardy should end, which
Yeah.
maybe that seems harsh or something. But, my initial reaction was like, no, no, no Jeopardy without Alex Trebek.
How do you succeed that exactly?
But it's interesting because it's been a couple of years and they haven't really settled on a new host, right? They've been doing rotating hosts and things like this.
That's exactly right. Ken Jennings is
Ken Jennings
probably
done for that.
the yeah Ken Jennings is probably the most frequent host, but yeah, they run through several folks.
Hmm.
What else we got going on? Let me mention something that's had to do with some things I've been writing about this year, and that's White Lotus. Now, White Lotus is one of these shows that's got caught up in the writer strike. We know what's going on there. We'll touch on that in just a minute, but
Yeah.
there's some real speculation about what's going to happen with the next season of White Lotus. I don't know that I've ever seen a show about people speculating about where a show will be located. Right, so we've had this discussion that maybe it's going to be in Thailand, maybe it's going to be in Australia, maybe it's going to be somewhere in the Far East. But now there's this new rumor out there that Mike White wants to do a prequel of sorts and bring some folks back and de-age them to be in the show. Do you see anything about that?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, first of all, I was going to say, like, I feel really happy for Mike White. He seems really excited about this,
Yeah,
but I don't think he at all imagined that it was going to be this successful. I mean, originally they were saying White Lotus was going to be a limited series,
right.
and then it was successful enough that he can make more. And I feel like Mike White's one of those guys that's been kind of out there laboring and quietly. And did you ever watch Enlightened?
I've never seen Enlightened. No.
Yeah, it was canceled. Right. Um, and but it's a good show. You should check. I mean, it's well. Anyway, I'm not going to prejudge it too much. People haven't seen it, but check out Enlightened. Lord Dern's in it. But it got canceled, and so I feel like, well, now he's got this thing. He seems really excited about it. What do you think about the de-aging prospect? Because the thing I read specifically was about doing de-aging and then and being able to continue the continuity of having now a younger Tanya, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm torn on that. I love the Tanya character, and I guess, and spoiler alert for season 2 of White Lotus. At the end of that season, we see that one of the bodies that was floating in the ocean there by the resort was Jennifer Coolidge's character of Tanya. Now, she was the one character that was sort of the through line between season 1 and season 2. So now it's not really an option for season 3, although Mike White apparently loves her. She loves being on that show, and so they're looking at options
Yeah.
of how to bring her back. But like I said, I'm torn on that. I just love the I think I love the format that they have set up with this. Let's bring in new folks. Let's go to exotic locations. Let's have a really interesting story. I think you can still do that story and tell it well without Jennifer Coolidge. But will I watch if they do a prequel and DH some of the folks? Yeah, of course I'll watch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much. I don't know what I think about the de-aging thing in general. Do you have a general opinion on it?
Well, we're about to have a sort of a tipping point of de-aging here with Indiana Jones movie coming up in a couple of weeks. There's going to be a lot of opinions about what's been done to Harrison Ford. I think when done selectively and done carefully, it can go well, but I think often that's just not the case.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that on the Righteous Gemstones, they do pretty well with John Goodman, making John Goodman younger. Actually, now that I think about it, so I have to second guess myself.
Yeah,
I feel like I have a general tendency to just say, don't do it.
Yep.
Like, if it came down to all of this stuff and all these worries about, how things might be affected with AI and using the likenesses of actors and their voices without them. Personally, I'd be on board with a blanket ban. I mean, if it came down to it, I'd prefer to, sort of be at fault almost in that direction. I'm saying oh, we're banning things that are okay. Also, fine, because I don't know, some of the stuff, like the prospect of them creating new footage of someone who's dead.
Yeah.
Which I guess I shouldn't even say prospect, because they've kind of done this a bit already.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I find that disgusting. And because they can't
I
consent.
think that we have, would I love to hear more James Earl Jones as Darth Vader in the future? Sure, I would love that. But I just don't think that that's a direction that they need to go, nor will the devoted fans of that type of franchise feel like they must have that, right? We have so much of that we can move on and we can do other things. So yeah, for me, if it's a binary decision, I would say let's push it all aside and forget all that.
But I guess, well, we'll see. I don't know. I wonder with the Mike Lotus thing, is it even really an idea or just something he's playing with? And he'd like to have Jennifer Coolidge still around, and that's part of what's inspiring it. Because, I mean, part of me thinks even if you wanted to do something with a younger version of that character, you cast a different actor. And I'm more on board with that sort of thing in general. I think we should look at what they do on Yellow Jackets, right? I mean, one of the most impressive things about Yellow Jackets to me is how you've got the younger and older versions of the same character, and they're played by different actresses, and there's really brilliant work going on there, right?
And they can get people like, the two versions of Natalie who almost act identically and have similar mannerisms. It's really uncanny. Yeah.
Sophie Thatcher and Juliette Lewis, they do great. I mean, so what a sadness it would be if the technology was good enough. They'd be like, well, just DH Juliette Lewis a whole bunch. It would be sad. It would be sad to me if they were to do that. So
anyway, no, I don't know. I mean, they're almost immediately after season 2 ended, they were talking about, they had an idea of doing Thailand and focusing on Eastern religion. Season 1 was about money. Season 2 was about sex. Season 3, they thought about doing religion and Eastern religion. Well, I bet something like that still happens. I think this is more of a long-term future thing.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, one thing I will say, though, the one interview I read with Mike White where this came up, the de-aging thing, he sounded really excited about keeping the show going and seemed to think that maybe it didn't even have to involve murder. Which I don't know. Fair enough. You can do other types of mysteries, like you can do the Hangover kind of thing. Which I thought was really kind of, I remember when I first saw that movie, it was striking to me how they played with that form, but it was, But I appreciate that about White Lotus, that there is that kind of that mystery element. So I hope
I mean, listen, he's caught lightning a lot with this show when, as you said, no one really expected it, and I think they're going to do everything they can to keep that bottled up and keep that formula working for as many seasons as they possibly can.
I was trying to think. Can you think of another show or anything that did it in just that way? Because the mystery is who's dead.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of something else where that was the mystery. And I feel like there must be things, and I'm just not thinking of them, but I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, there must be, but I just it's been so unique, not only in the way that they've uncovered the mystery, but it's sort of this anthology nature of it. It just I can't really think of much that to compare it to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. Yeah. No, it's that you could compare it to other mystery shows, right? I
Sure,
mean,
sure, yeah.
the Murder She Wrote or something like this.
Yeah,
The Murder, it's an anthology show. Sure, we probably don't think of it that way, right? It's a lot of the old, the very episodic, right?
yeah,
But you could view them almost as anthologies because it's always a new case. You get a new set of characters. You just have the continuity of the one detective or what have you.
yeah.
Um,
Well, what
but anyhow,
about let's lose that segue into something that's affecting White Lotus, which is this writer's
yeah,
strike. Do you have any just
writer strike.
general thoughts or impressions on? I mean, obviously this has been going on since May 2nd. Just sort of
Yeah.
thoughts on what's been happening over the last month or 5 weeks.
Well, I mean, for me, the short version would be that they need to pay the writers. They should be paying these people well, in my opinion. And honestly, we've got a list of a couple things recently where production shut down. And yeah, it bums me out. So apparently the Community movie's delayed.
Yep.
You mentioned Stranger Things is on the list now.
Stranger Things was scheduled to start
Um,
filming this month and it stopped. Yeah.
and honestly, even with the things that I like, yeah, if Yellow Jackets season 3 is delayed, um, Severance, whatever. Uh, my knee jerk reaction is good. I don't
Yeah.
know what you think about this.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm completely on your side, obviously, and on the side of the writers here. You start to read some of the details, and they get into, these people were getting like checks for 3 cents for residuals from when their shows went to streaming. They're basically getting nothing for, when their shows get bought by these streaming companies. That's got to be addressed. The AI thing's got to be addressed. I mean, these are, in my opinion, obviously an outsider perspective, reasonable demands that these guys are putting out there.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I've got an outsider's perspective on it too, so some of the details, but from what I've read and understand about it, various things about how writers' rooms are run, and that I think without getting caught up in details, which may also be beyond us, I think if anyone's not really kind of up to speed on this, maybe a simple way to think about it is they're working under contracts written under the old system, like
Right.
the old system of you have a network TV show with 22 episodes a season. You
Yeah.
know, they're getting paid by the episode. Then they're going to get
Yeah.
royalties. They're going to get residuals based on that show, hopefully going into syndication. When it gets over 100 episodes. I think that was generally
Yeah.
the number.
All the syndication
Um,
rules are outdated now. Yeah.
None of that is the case anymore. So, I mean, everyone knows this. You just look at Netflix. You get a new show on Netflix, like, oh, here's the new season. Maybe it's 10 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's 8. Maybe it's 6. And so the writers, they've also apparently been running a lot of what they call mini rooms, and I don't know all the details about this, but like they're only getting paid when they're working on that, and then they're unemployed. Yeah. And
Right.
then the residual structure, my understanding is really in the age of streaming, they put things up front. And one thing I was reading recently is that with a lot of these shows, they made promises to pay people more um, in the third season, in the fourth season.
Yeah.
This includes like the showrunner, right? So that they're signing on, they're getting, some money, and they're kind of playing on the idea, sort of old school idea, like, oh, we have a successful show. Of course you're going to make it to season 4, right? And then you're going to get your payday or whatever. So I think it feeds into, like, this is actually one of the reasons why Netflix cancels so many shows after 2
Yep.
seasons.
Yep.
So it's really all just kind of messed up. And I mean, I think it's really unfortunate, and it's really a bummer if some of my favorite shows get delayed
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of the writer's strike. But when it comes down to it, I'm wholeheartedly on the side of the writers and would say they shouldn't be producing anything as long as the strike goes on. Like, I mean, I would almost go as far as like everyone else should also be like, no, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, you're 100% right about that. Will it bum me out if we look back at when this happened 15 years ago and seasons were delayed and seasons got shortened and seasons were pushed back? If that happens again, is it gonna, am I gonna be upset about it? Of course, but these people certainly need to be compensated fairly for what they're doing. They need to be taken care of. But yeah, it's. I think we're almost to the point already where a lot of those shows you mentioned. I know Yellow Jackets. I know Severance. I know Abbott Elementary. They literally met on May 1st and 2nd to start writing new seasons, and then they had to stop. Right, so they got together, started pitching some ideas, then they had to leave the room. Right, pencils down, and so that's it. It's just to the point where it's almost it's inevitable right now.
Well, yeah, and one thing that people should know is that part of what can feed into this is whether they have a writer on set.
Yep.
Right. So, in theory, potentially things could go into production without having a writer on set. People might say, well, why is that important? Isn't the thing already written? Well, they make little adjustments, they've got to do little rewrites, and it's really standard practice to have writers there.
Yes.
Because generally speaking, they're the ones who know all of the things you want someone to know, right?
Yeah.
So the possibility of there being clunky, bad stuff, I mean, like the last thing in the world I want,
Yeah.
the very last thing that I want is for there to be a season of my favorite show that comes out that's staffed by scab writers or something
Yeah.
like this, and it's just bad. I would rather they never make any more ever.
Yeah, there is one tentpole example of exactly what you're talking about. Apparently, House of the Dragon season 2 is moving forward. Like it's written, and so they're starting to film, but they're starting to film without their writers and their writing supervisors on set. And so, gosh, you can imagine a show like that and the language and the intricate story and the things that are involved there. I'm worried, frankly. I mean, I was a fan generally of the first season. I'm worried of what the second season will look like if they don't come to a point where they can use those folks, and they shouldn't use them until they're taken care of.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just push forward. It's a concern.
And really, I mean, I don't know. I thought the first season was already on shaky ground, but yeah, it was kind of. Yeah, I mean, I watched it. I got some entertainment out of it, but yeah, I mean, you could clearly see how a show like that could be really bad, with that. So,
yeah, you thought it was complicated telling a story across like 3 different time jumps. Try doing it without writers around there to help you explain what's going on. That's gonna be tough.
yeah,
Anyway,
they'll just mess things up and not care. I mean, it's I don't know. It's really. I'd hope that they would have resolved this by now.
Yeah.
I've read that Netflix may be kind of a big one, kind of holding out in terms of not wanting to give the writers what they want. We'll see
I
what
think
happens.
back in 2008, if I remember correctly, it lasted 3.5 months. Of course, that was, 2008 was a completely different world than what we live in now. I mean, a lot less.
Streaming didn't exist.
Yeah, it didn't exist, right? So certainly more issues to address. But there was, just to circle back to the show we were talking about, to Lost, right? And Lost season 4 was truncated to 14 episodes because of the strike. They had planned that season to do this arc for the character Libby, who had this kind of mysterious background. You had seen her at the same place as Hurley, and she appeared once for a few seconds in season 4. They had this whole arc to explain what she was doing and who she was. Completely lost to the strike because they had to cut all that stuff out. So we're in significant danger of stuff like that happening to some of these best shows.
Yeah, and I hope that I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Anyway, it's a reality. It's a reality right now.
But I don't know. Speaking of Yellow Jackets, I did want to mention the bonus episode. There's apparently supposed to be a bonus episode, and I don't know to what extent this is affected by the strike. Also, is it done? Is it completely done? I have no idea. There were a lot of rumors out there. I had noticed this, like that originally they listed 10 episodes in the season and then it became 9 episodes. And if you were on the Reddit at all, which I will be, all sorts of people are like, oh, there's going to be a secret 10th episode, and then finally, it's like people on Twitter, I think, were saying like they were going to wait up because they thought maybe it's going to be a surprise episode. And Ashley Lyle, who seems really cool from everything I've seen about her, chimed in on Twitter. It was like, don't do that. There's good, she's like, there's going to be a bonus episode, but it's not tonight. Go get some sleep. There will be one between season 2 and season 3.
Yeah, that I don't know much about this. I mean, the details, as you said, are scarce. It's going to drop at some random time that it's just going to be a surprise, just to sort of whet people's appetite as we get ready for the next season, I think.
I hope there's notice. I don't know. I don't like when they drop things without notice.
Yeah. We got to prepare. We got to have something. We got to have something written about it. We got to have some notice of that.
Yeah, no, what? Or at least have to be ready.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like I was really afraid that Black Mirror comes out in a couple of days with the writing on that and everything, and the history rating on Black Mirror, and I was really afraid that Netflix was just going to drop it without notice because all they'd said was June, and it was just time was passing, and I was sitting here, and it was like May 30th, and it was still like all they said was June, and I was terrified that they were just going to drop it all June 2nd. With no warning, but they did tell us. So
so you're right. Black Mirror coming out next week. What you're getting ready to watch that? I know I am too. What else are you watching right now?
Right now I'm catching up a bit on Justified.
Good.
I don't know if it's at all necessary in order to enjoy the new series that comes out in July. I think probably not, because I think what we're getting is just like a new Raylan Givens story. I don't know.
Yeah. I was gonna say it may not be necessary, but it's just great to revisit Raylan Givens. It's such a good character.
Yeah, and I mean, but at least my understanding is I'm pretty sure that there's no Boyd Crowder in the new stuff. It wouldn't really make sense. I mean, maybe they could shoehorn him in somehow or something. It doesn't seem like. So that's kind of a bummer, because I am feeling again as I'm watching it. It's like, I know Raylan's the main character of the show, but Boyd Crowder's kind of the main character of the show.
That's right.
That's how I feel about it, at least.
Is that going to be? Did I hear this right? In Detroit, is that where this new season is set? Seems like such a deviation from Kentucky.
I believe so, and I did keep my ear out. There was one. It's interesting. Starting back at season 1 of Justified, it's very episodic at first. It's very case of the week.
Yeah,
and one of those early ones, there is an episode where they talk about this guy being from Detroit, but he dies in the episode.
Yeah,
I think there was some more stuff about Detroit, so I mean that would be the only thing. There's probably little nuggets in there, but I don't know how much it's going to matter.
Am I right in saying that this is also a series of books that have Raylan Givens set in Detroit? I may be imagining that, but I think there are.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on Elmore Leonard to know the details of that. I know the original source material is Elmore Leonard, and I think there are at least multiple stories, if not multiple books. I'd have to double check on the details of that. I know that with the original Justified, they say that it's based on a short story.
Okay.
Like in the first episode. But I haven't really read Elmore Leonard. My dad used to read Elmore Leonard, and that's about all I know about Elmore Leonard.
Yeah. No, I'm not certainly not up on that. I think that show comes out in a month. I'm with you. I'm really looking forward to it.
Should be fun. What have you been watching lately?
Well, we're right now, at least this week, we're in a little bit of a lull after some real significant pieces of television ended. Obviously, Succession is over, Barry is over, Ted Lasso is over, Top Chef is over. So we got this sort of couple-week period where we're in a downtime before we start to get The Bear's coming, Black Mirror, True Detective is coming soon, Secret Invasion, Justified, which we talked about. So there's some things coming soon, but I'm trying to catch up on a couple things. One of the things I watched recently, and primarily this is because I live in Texas. I'm from Texas. My wife is from North Texas. I'm sure you can deduce all these things from my accent. But one of the things I just caught up on was Love and Death on HBO. I guess technically that's a Max production. Love
That
and
is a
Death.
Max original.
Yeah. So
I'm
forgive
as
me,
your
HBO.
editor,
Yeah.
I will insist on being pedantic. And let me take the opportunity. This is another semi-news item, right? Because
Yeah.
HBO Max became Max, which everyone knows is stupid.
Yeah. Why not we throw our best
Um,
brand in the trash? Yeah, I
not
hear you.
not the production company, the branding.
Yeah,
To be
yeah.
clear. Sorry to my friends over at Max. But yeah, I mean it's interesting. The branding, I've always tried to be pretty on top of this with the site. It's always been sort of weird because when they launched HBO Max, they insisted and always treated that as a separate brand from HBO.
Right.
So it's still the HBO still exists. Think about the cable network, the production company. Um, Succession, that's HBO. Barry's HBO. The Righteous Gemstones is HBO. The Idol, which is on right now, is HBO. And then stuff that just goes to the streaming service, they were calling that HBO Max.
Yeah.
So if anything, look, if there's a positive, maybe it clarifies things a little bit in the long term.
If you're streaming
That
your Max, if you're tentpole on the network, your HBO.
Yeah, that a show like, of course, Love and Death is a weird one because
Yeah.
they're like, we're gonna put this show out and we're gonna tell you that we're gonna rebrand next month, but then we're going to brand the show that came out before we rebranded with the new brand.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, the deal would be now
Yeah.
that this is established that a show like Love and Death, they would say, is a Max original
Right. You're right. Yes.
and
Love and Death
not
is,
HBO.
yeah, Love and Death is technically and officially a Max production. I liked it for just again, my wife being from that area. It takes place in Wiley, Texas, over about 1978 to 1980. It's about a couple of families, a lady named Candy Montgomery, and played by Elizabeth Olsen, and Jesse Plemons plays Alan Gore. The two of them have an affair, and then there's a murder of Alan's wife, and just the story of that and her trial. It's based on a true story. There's actually a Hulu documentary that came out, or docu-series, I guess I should say, came out last year.
It's called Candy, right?
Like
I've seen neither
yeah,
of these shows, so I'm very, very torn about this because I'm kind of interested and I have no idea which one I would choose
yeah,
or even which one I would choose first. And if I went to the cast, that doesn't help because I love all of the actors in both of them.
yeah. I think
The
I chose Love and Death because I'm a Jesse Plemons fan and will follow him in everything that he does, whether it's an episode of Black Mirror or Game Night or Fargo or Friday Night Lights, whatever it is, I'll follow him wherever he goes.
That's
So I think,
fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
I mean, he is burned into my mind as Todd from Breaking Bad.
That's right. That's right.
And then El Camino. I mean, honestly, in my mind, his performance is what made El Camino feel like it really worked as a film.
Yeah.
So I'm with you there. But then you look at the Hulu series, Candy, Melanie Linsky's in it.
That's right. That's right. She is in that. Gosh, she is really freaking everywhere right now. It's incredible.
So I don't know. I think through indecisiveness, I end up not watching either one.
Well, if you want a pretty quick, I think it's 6 or 7 episodes. Interesting story, really good performances. Yeah, I recommend Love and Death on Max. You won't be disappointed, especially if you've got any history with early 1980s Texas. You'll feel right at home.
I mean, I've never been to Texas, right? So only at a distance, I suppose.
So yeah, so I'm catching up on a few things like that. Love and Death has been great. I'm watching a show you're writing about. I'm watching Silo on Apple TV Plus.
Going to take us there, right? Yeah. Are you enjoying it? Let's just start there.
I am enjoying it because I enjoy that nature of show. I can't say that without also saying that I have been slightly disappointed in the last few episodes based on where we started with the first two, I guess is the best way to put that.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I felt. But I've been writing on it. If you read my things, whether people listening have read my things, I'm not going to presume everyone reads my articles.
Yeah.
You know, but I thought that the beginning was really good.
Yep.
And give you this little behind the scenes story almost, right? So I started watching it. It's a 2 episode premiere. I thought the first episode was great. I thought the second episode remained really good, but like already it ticked down a little bit for me. And so I went ahead and I wrote that article on the premiere of the show. I did those 2 episodes together, as we often do. Sometimes we split them up, but I ran them together, and I went and I watched episode 3, and I wrote something up, and I thought about stopping.
Interesting.
Like, I thought about not publishing that article and not watching the show anymore. So my feelings about episode 3 were pretty low, I guess would be fair to say. But then I watched episode 4 and thought, oh wow, this is better. I don't know. I'm really hoping that by the end of the season they get somewhere. I mean, I'll give them this. They tried something really risky because they basically changed the main character.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And maybe that worked better for some people than it did for me.
Yeah.
But I'm not a huge fan of the protagonist, and she just still doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. So again, spoilers for this show that it's Rashida Jones is not long for the show. She is removed off the board in very short order. And I thought, well, she's I think one of the executive producers. I guess it makes sense. She comes in, she does a piece, she's gonna go back to her other duties. But then the sheriff, Sheriff Holston, I think is his name, is also removed very quickly. And so you just sort of shocked by that constantly happening, and then it happens to more characters and more characters and more characters. And yeah, it just seems like, what's the consistency here, and what's the through line that we need to follow with all these folks?
Yeah, but I mean, I did feel like by the time you get to the third episode, Julia's practically walking around with a placard that says protagonist on it.
Yeah.
The problem is that they did like nothing to make me care about her. And I still don't really. And that's a problem because I think the premise of the show is really interesting.
Yeah.
Apologies to people who haven't been watching this, who don't know what we're talking about. Not just for possible spoilers here, but the premise of the show, I think, is fascinating. You've got humanity or this civilization or whatever. I mean, I think it's implied that this is like all of humanity, and they're living inside this silo and they can't go outside. But what I thought was really fascinating from the beginning is they don't know why.
Exactly.
So, like, as opposed to this sort of post-apocalyptic story that we're more familiar with, that we get all over the place, that spends a lot of time on, like, what is the Armageddon or what have you, is it a coronavirus? Like, no, they have no idea, right? And then those details, right? I mean, I think as we move forward, maybe some people, maybe the bad guys know the score, and I don't know. And it has kept me going because I'm still intrigued by that premise.
Yes.
I just want it to move forward. Like, I don't think it really has. And at this point, I mean, what, we're 7 episodes in?
Yep.
At this point. And I'm just hoping that by the end of the season, something happens.
Yeah.
Basically, like, I don't mean like action, because there's been action and stuff like that. Right. But that's part of my problem with episode 3 is it was like, oh, there's this big threat to everything. There's a threat to the generator. And I was sitting here, I was like, I don't actually care. Like, maybe that'd be interesting if the silo broke. That sounds interesting.
Right. Let's see what happens. Yeah. It was funny that episode was one of the most episodic things I've ever seen inside a serialized show. And it sort of served as nothing but a distraction of what's actually supposed to be happening here.
They hadn't grounded these characters. It was very weird to me. It was just like they needed to do some work before that, I think, to not just to help characterize our lead, but the people in the silo in general, to show us a bit more of their lives, and we just felt like they're playing on this threat, and all I had to hang my hat on in terms of caring was some like very, very general regard for people.
Yeah.
And it was
I'll
just,
say two things. One of which is I've talked to one or two people that have read the series of books this is based on and are big fans of those books. And so I think there could be some, depending on how they're stretching out the arc of this show, could be some interesting things happening, but also that it seemed like in episode 7, they were trying to, as we sort of turn this final lap into the end of the season, trying to talk a little bit more about why we don't know the history, why we don't remember the history. And so maybe we're headed that direction.
you know,
But I mean, I think I'm with you. They need to get there pretty
well,
quickly.
I think they have to be. I mean, this is what's
Yeah.
become clear to me. I mean, picking apart TV and stuff, you start thinking about the structure of the story and almost imagining yourself in the writer's position, the writer of a TV show. I think it has to be the case that the structure is going to be that we get to the end of the first season.
Yeah.
But the problem is, Ryan, that I feel like it might be that we fundamentally get to the end of the first season and we're kind of back where we were
Yeah.
at the end
Yeah.
of episode 1. And it needs to go a little further than that.
Yeah. Remember this mystery we introduced? Yeah, exactly.
Like it needs to, because what are we doing? But you're right. I mean, excuse me. I don't know. Have you ever watched the videos made by this guy, Pete Peppers, on YouTube? You familiar with
No.
Pete Peppers? We have very similar tastes. I can't say I watch all of his stuff, but I started watching his stuff with Twin Peaks back in 2017, and then I'll notice it's like, oh, he's doing videos on Better Call Saul or Severance, or well, he's doing videos on Silo. And I watched one of them and was like, oh man, I wish I found this as interesting as Pete apparently does. And I just kind of don't. So I don't know. I've remained somewhat hopeful for it that
Yeah.
they will,
Yeah.
because they had something really intriguing going on at the beginning,
Agreed.
and they haven't serviced the mystery well. I don't think.
Yeah.
I guess what I would say.
You and I are on exactly the same page for that show. I will be finishing it, hoping for the best. But yeah, we'll see where they try to land this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what's we're watching a few things, but there's a couple of interesting things coming up. What are we going to be doing? What are we going to be doing next? We got a good show coming out next week. Actually, a couple good shows coming out next week.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the bear. We did hit on a little bit before, and we meet next week and put something out talking about season 1 as we're excited for season 2, which comes out on the 22nd
Correct.
of
Yep.
June. So definitely looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to talking about it with you.
Yeah. Now you've just finished season 1 for the first time. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been maybe a week or so at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, I don't know. There's so much TV out there. One can hardly watch everything. But The Bear was one that had been on my radar because it kind of came out and became a little bit of a phenomenon.
Right.
Which is interesting because, excuse me, it was interesting in part to me because it wasn't really on my radar before that happened. All of a sudden, everyone was talking about The Bear. I was like, wait, what? And
yeah, and you just so very rarely these days see a show really just, as you said, come out of nowhere, come out of maybe less promotion, less impressions. Just it's seriously something that just was completely word of mouth for me. It was completely seeing people talking about it, hearing people talking about it. I had not heard of it before, seeing some friends and I think a family member start to reference it. So yeah, just that phenomenon of how that happens these days. Clearly it's not in that place now. It's a very eagerly anticipated show coming out, and sort of what was the formula that led to that, and what we expect coming into season 2 after such an interesting season 1. Yeah, those are some of the things I hope we get to hit on.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that was really striking to me was about just the vibe of it. Maybe this is what you mentioned. Top Chef. I used to watch Top Chef years ago. Yep. I've not watched Top Chef in years. But there is that element about The Bear where there's element about the food You get some nice shots of food.
You do.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. We like the food shots, right?
Yeah, you really do. Now, you told me you've worked at a restaurant before. I have not worked in a restaurant before. I don't know the environment. I don't know the culture. I don't know how much that show reflects reality. But if it's not right, they do a very good job of making it look like it's right and look like it's that type of hectic atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do a good job with that. I mean, I can't say that the restaurant experience I have was exactly like that, but I think that's part of what landed for a lot of people who have, some level of experience of working in a restaurant, working in the kitchen, um, that sort of thing. But then it probably, I mean, I guess it works for people who don't have that experience also, you know,
It
like
did. It worked on me, and it made me. I don't know. It made me think.
you haven't had the personal experience of
Exactly.
running the expediter station where the tickets are coming out and you're supposed to take them one at a time and decide, tell people like the one scene where he's just getting like overwhelmed
Yep.
with those tickets. Oh my God.
Bring back bad memories for you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a really interesting season two. If you've seen the trailer, they're opening. The beef is turning into the bear. They're creating a new restaurant. They've got a time limit. So I'm curious, and we're going to get into a lot of this next week, obviously. But
Yeah.
curious if they can sort of capture that same vibe while trying to open a restaurant, as opposed to saving a restaurant that exists that is sort of a cultural icon. I'm curious how they're going to try to approach all of that, but
Yeah,
we'll get into it.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because you imagine they're still going to have some of that interplay in terms of the history of the place and
Right.
so on. And there's a kind of metaphorical or symbolic level, I guess, to what's going on with the restaurant, but or with our protagonist's desire to turn the restaurant around and the backstory of the brother. Maybe we don't want to go too far here.
Yeah. No,
This evening.
we'll
So
save it because there's some deep things we can go into with the show. But we'll save it for the deep dive we'll do over the next couple weeks.
yeah, so that'll be the basic plan to people. Hopefully you've enjoyed listening to Ryan and I talk here about television. And again, moving forward, generally speaking, we'll try to hit on some news items that have caught our attention over the course of the week, that sort of thing. As I've said to Ryan before, I don't want to gossip, so we'll see how we curate this. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you go. I'm looking at even the relatively big name, even like the reputable publications. I
Right.
have something of a feeling when I read them that they are, maybe gossip isn't the right word, but you get stories about people's personal lives and things like this
Yeah.
that are I think just a little too reminiscent to me of tabloids or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So
No, we're going to stick to the content on the screen, and we're going to dive sometimes deep, sometimes shallow, and we'll go lots of different directions. I think with a lot of different shows.
yeah, so we need some production news and things like that. We'll talk about what's
Yep.
going on. And then the basic plan will be that we will ultimately start having more of a deep dive in the latter part of the podcast. So hopefully you've seen The Bear already and will join us next week. Or if you haven't seen The Bear already, go watch season one. And because we're not going to hold back at all, I think, when it comes to spoilers. But we will hold off until next time.
That sounds great. And you can find us at tvobsessive.com for Caemeron, Crain, Ryan Kirksey. We hope you guys join us next week. We'll dive into The Bear season one.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. See you next
Thanks.
week.
See you next time.
All right.